Hi there, thanks for coming here. I'm Thomas Smithyman, PhD. I'm a clinical psychologist. I specialize in treating social anxiety. For today, I want to talk about one of the most important of the kind of social skill kind of things, which is self-disclosure. So it's very important, and I see a lot of problems with self-disclosure in social anxiety. People will come in and we sort of start to talk about where the problems come up, and see if this is true for you. But a lot of times people are very concerned about saying the wrong thing. And it can be wrong in numerous ways, like maybe I'll reveal something unlikable about myself, or what I'll say is not cool enough or funny enough. But that concern about I'm going to say something that's going to reveal a flaw of some kind, many people respond to that, but with that protection, a self-protection, like we talked about in a previous video, what is social anxiety? The response of protecting, in this case, the most obvious way of protecting yourself from revealing flaws is to not reveal as much. So maybe not talk at all, talk as little as possible, or don't reveal things that are personal or about you or your own opinions. The way I'll see this when I'm working with people, sometimes there's a filter that's installed, and instead of thoughts just naturally coming out, instead of just thinking out loud like we do when we're socializing with people we're close to, instead there's a filter, and we have thoughts. It goes through the filter. The filter's deciding, is this good enough, is this not good enough, what will people think about it, and then stuff gets cut out. And so what's revealed gets smaller and smaller, and oftentimes, like, someone might be asked a personal question, and the answer might be cut down to just a handful of words. As little information as possible, delivered as briefly as possible. And this is an attempt to self-protect. Alternatively, some people have a different strategy of, they've discovered that they can have pretty good conversations by asking a lot of questions, but not actually revealing things about themselves. So they'll ask a lot of questions to the other person talking. People kind of like that. But it means the spotlight's not on you, so you don't reveal things and things don't go wrong. So these are very common safety behaviors, very common strategy. People often don't realize that this causes a lot of problems. Right? This is a source of many connection problems. Because the truth is, self-disclosure is, it's the engine of connection. Like, this is how we connect with people, is through self-disclosure. In one, it's very hard to have a conversation with somebody who reveals little about themselves. If you're asked a question and you answer with a protected response with very little information, it's just hard for that to go anywhere. Like, it's like taking the ball and just dropping it on the ground. The other person has to work really hard to go pick the ball up and try to get the back and forth going again. Because in general conversation, someone's talking for a while, and they're revealing a bunch of information, and this lights up these light bulbs for other people. Like, it triggers them to see things and to think things and remember things, which then gives them things to respond with. Yeah, it's very hard to connect with somebody who's not giving you much, because it's hard to get a conversation going. You need someone to reveal information in order for it to trigger you to think of things. If you give very little, the other person is going to have a hard time thinking of stuff to say, and they're going to have to work really hard to get a conversation going. So it just cuts off conversations. And it puts a lot of pressure on the person you're talking with. And the other thing too is, it's hard to connect to somebody, just the actual connection process. It's hard to connect to somebody if they don't show you who they are. Like, we need to see who somebody is in order to connect. Like, we might have things in common, but the less that I reveal, the less that other person will know that we have that in common. And other than that, just the less you know the person. Like, it's hard to connect with someone if you know nothing about them. Like, think about who you connect with and who you really feel a strong affinity with. You probably know something about them. You probably reveal these things. You can even have a very good time with somebody, but if they don't reveal who they are, it won't get any deeper than that. In fact, and I'll end up telling people I work with this a lot. In fact, if you don't self-disclose, if you don't reveal who you are and talk about yourself, people actually interpret that as being rejecting. So that actually makes the other person feel as though you want them to go away, you don't want to talk, you don't want to connect. This is part of the problem. This is part of why, like, shy people or socially anxious people, despite caring a lot about others, this is part of why they end up having sometimes a reputation of being stuck up or haughty, because people don't see the anxiety. What they see is the protection. What they see is the decision not to engage, or the decision to not give anything, or to stand off. So you really want to self-disclose. Conversations will go much better. It's a requirement in order to connect. In fact, like, if you look at research for a second, research shows that if I self-disclose to somebody, they like me more. Great. Other thing is, if I self-disclose to somebody and they accept it, I like them more. This is why I say it's the engine of connection. The pattern, like one model I have for this, the pattern of human social connection goes like this. Someone self-discloses, the other person accepts it, they reciprocate and self-disclose, it gets accepted, and people slowly work their way down and become deeper and deeper into a connection. So there's a couple of things in that model that are important for self-disclosure. One, matching. So the fact that it kind of goes back and forth, not like exactly one-to-one, like I self-disclose, now you self-disclose. Sometimes it'll be one person discloses more for a day. The next time the other person reveals more about themselves. But in general, you do want to match. Like, I'll ask people sometimes to kind of diagnose this. You know, do you end up in relationships where the other person has revealed more about themselves than you have? Do you end up in these imbalanced relationships? People don't like those. Those don't feel good. It's hard to trust the person, or you can feel too vulnerable or embarrassed. So you want it to be matched. The good news is people tend to match. So, like, we feel most comfortable that way. So if we reveal more, oftentimes it encourages the other person to reveal more too. And so we have both sides of this process happening. So part of that is depth. So you want to match how often, frequency, but you also want to match the depth. So you probably don't want to bust out your medical problems when you first meet someone, because it's too deep, it's too revealing. People tend to start up at kind of surfacey stuff, work their way down opinions and thoughts and experiences, and only kind of later on do you get to those more vulnerable personal things. It might look like this, like a funnel, because you can reveal surface level stuff to a lot of people, but the deeper down you get, you want to pick and choose the right people. But you don't end up in relationships where one person's revealing down here and the other person's up here. That doesn't feel particularly great. What I would encourage you to do is to, having watched this, practice deliberately self-disclosing more. Consider how much you're doing it. Do it more, say more. Sometimes it's as simple as just using more words, giving more details. Or it might be, common things to talk about, interests, like things you enjoy doing, recent experiences you've had, your opinions on things that are happening at the moment. It's very easy to find self-disclosure topics around kind of like cultural events, like New Year's or Christmas or whatever, those kind of things. Also, telling personal stories is great. So if someone's talking and it reminds you of an experience you had, practice telling it as a personal story. We can have another video at some point where we get into some of the details of how to tell stories. One exercise that I do with people a lot that's really useful for this, I do it sort of one-on-one, but you can practice it on your own too, is I basically ask the person a question, some sort of curiosity question about them, and then have them give me an answer. Then I would ask them the same question and say, give me an answer that's twice as long. This forces you to filter less, self-disclose more, try to come up with more details. Then I have them do that a third time, twice as long again, until in order to answer for that long, you've got to bring in tangents and associated ideas, give me more background. Another easy way to have more self-disclosure is just give more details. Like, give more background, give more details. Like, what happened beforehand? What were the example? Like, what were the details of what happened during it? And then what was the result? What did you think of that? What was your opinion about that? What was your experience? What do you take away from that? Give me more of the insight into what is going through your head, what you're thinking. I know that it can feel risky, because the reason that probably you're not self-disclosing, if this is true for you, is because of the risk. It feels like something might go wrong. But hopefully by understanding the process and kind of understanding that more self-disclosure tends to be very, very helpful, and also that less self-disclosure is problematic. Hopefully that gives you a little more confidence to try it out. So I'd encourage you to spend maybe the next week deliberately self-disclose more with people, and then kind of see how it feels. I ask people to do this a lot. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. Please subscribe to this. I'll put out some more videos once a week, and go to my website too. Okay, thank you.